Hello and welcome into the Fantasy
Football.
Fanatics. Today we are going to do a preview of the rookie wide receiver and running backs coming into this upcoming draft. And we're going to start off with the receivers here. And Eli, do you want to go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, I'll kick us off. I did a lot of film reviewing over the week, and I created my own listing of who I thought would be number one to number eight receiver, just getting my own opinions in. But I think from what we saw at the combine and who was leading it first was CeeDee Lamb, but I have number one as Jerry Jeudy, and I think everyone would agree with that now, as his route running is uh, I've never seen route running like it. It's crazy how fast his feet move before he even starts his route running. And he has a nice touch for the catch. He's not as big as Julio and Calvin Johnson. That was like his only knock because he wasn't the biggest receiver, but he was quick on his feet and uh, he had great yards uh, per catch after the carry, usually because he was already out of touch from everyone he was out running because of his route. But I have him listed really high. But everything that's been said about him, he's really well known. There's not much to add that people don't already know. Do you
Yeah,
agree with that?
that's mostly what a lot of people realize with Jerry Jeudy. He's a really refined route runner with great attention to detail. And he's listed at 6'1", 193. He's got pretty good size. He's not huge or anything, but he ran a 4.45 40-yard dash. So he's pretty fast too, but like you said, he's not up at that like Julio Jones elite size speed, but he's definitely not lacking it either.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, we saw 2018, I think he had a better year than 2019, but that's because this past year they had so many weapons that he was more so just the possession receiver, and he wasn't really relied on for the big chunk plays because they used Henry Ruggs more so in that aspect.
Yeah, he was competing with him.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well,
Uh,
we'll move on to CeeDee Lamb, who, as
CD
you
Lamb,
mentioned before, and he's listed at 6'2", 198, a little bit bigger than Judy, and he's
Judah,
Juder, Jerry Juder, that's his name now.
his name.
And his 40-yard dash time was 4.5, which is, like I said, he's a little bigger than Judy, just a smidge slower. Not that it matters that much, but he was a yards after the catch monster in 2019. I mean, he averaged 21.4 yards per reception, and that's huge because he's not, like we said, he's not like a super fast guy. It's just he's a monster with the ball in his hands. He breaks tackles. He's very physical. He runs good routes, and he's great with those 50-50 balls.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he averaged around. He said 20 yards per reception, but after the reception, he also had at least four. It was like 4.4 yards, even after he caught it, which is insane to be consistent on that basis. Again, he has a nice touch for the catch. That's something I look for highly that you'll see in the list that I made because that natural ability and sort of calmness that you see as the ball goes into the hand, really all the top wide receivers have that.
Yeah, and the big difference I see between him and Judy is, for me, I think CeeDee Lamb, he's a little bit more exciting, but Jerry Judy, I see him as a little more boring. But Judy just consistently gets the job done. But that's the kind of a difference I see with those two players personally.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think you'll see a lot more contested balls with how people use CeeDee Lamb, and he's has amazing body positioning when he's going for the 50-50,
Body control.
and that's the thing people love to see. What you see within the Super Bowls, all those amazing catches, the helmet catch, the Jermaine Curse catch. I know I'm listing Patriots thing because I'm a Patriots fan, but all these catches that you remember are due to the big, exciting 50-50 balls that people just have to catch, and he's going to be great for that. But also someone that's going to carry you, that could possibly carry you through the playoffs with consistency is how Larry Fitzgerald did with the Cardinals in their Super Bowl run. He was just a consistent, caught so many balls in their whole playoff run that year, and I think Jerry Jeudy could be used in even more highly route running ability, but and then get his hands up to how Fitz's were.
You're saying Jerry Judy, you're kind of compared to Fitzgerald, right?
Yeah, I think he could compare easily. Not like the size of the hands, but his natural ability to catch. And I think if not equal, then more route running ability.
Yeah, I see him kind of similar to like how Amari Cooper was coming out of college because he was
Yeah,
pretty highly touted and he was known for being a great route runner. But I think Judy's might be better at this point coming out of college. And a lot of people will compare CeeDee Lamb with Andrew Hopkins, and I think that's just such a great comparison right there.
I think it is. Yeah, and
Yeah,
you see that with the contested balls and the consistent wide receiver you can look to.
yeah, and those yards at the catch, they just run with the intensity for sure.
Mhm.
Well, we'll move on to Henry Ruggs,
Yes,
and he's listed at 5'11", 188 pounds, and of course, what he's known for is his speed, which he ran a 4.27 40 time, which is blazing fast.
crazy. Yeah,
And he's just a speedster, of course. And but what I saw was cool because you don't usually see this out of a speedster. Was he's a great blocker and he plays with intensity, which is
yeah,
a
yeah.
big plus for somebody who's just a smaller speed guy and he runs good routes. He has soft hands. The only thing
Mhm.
I see is he needs to improve a little bit in press coverage.
I would agree. The speed, I think you classify wide receivers in size, speed, and route running, and he's a speed receiver, and that's going to separate him just as much as a great route ran is, and he's going to be able to consistently, hopefully, improve on that route running, but also be
Sure.
that long ball that you need. His one knock is he even had for his size a pretty decent yards after catch ability due to his speed, but once he has contact on him, usually he goes down, but that makes sense for his size. But I agree with what you said.
Yeah, and I think his ceiling. I mean, I think this is pretty obvious. His ceiling would be somebody like Tyreek Hill, but then there's also guys like John Ross and Darius Hayward Bay who were speedsters drafted high that didn't pan out. But I really have much more confidence in Ruggs, more so than I would with out of John Ross.
Yeah, and he could be that wide receiver that the Patriots had that just went to the Rams that was just traded to the Texans actually
Brandon
yesterday.
Cooks.
Brandon Cooks, that type of middle of the ground wide receiver, could have a few years in him. But I'd like to see more from Henry Ruggs. I think he could produce because also he was competing with Jerry Judy the whole time.
Yeah, I like that with Brandon Cooks too.
Yeah. I always forget the names sometimes. I know exactly the teams, but not the names. But okay, let's move on to the next wide receiver. And this is where my list may get a little not like the usual, but I have moving up from wherever all the drafts have him, Michael Pittman Jr. I think he's insanely underrated with the film I've seen. I see no knocks on him that he had to be any less than um, obviously it had to be less than those three, but any less than people like Mims, uh, LaVisca,
Shenault.
Jalen Rager. Yeah. He had a great natural soft hands ability to the catch, something again I always look high on. He's pretty fast for his size. Exceptional route running. They listed him as one of the top route runners in the draft. Um, he even had some decent yards after the catch ability. He was used in a lot of positions at the school he was at, being more of the number one wide receiver. But he has a great finesse and softness that is just it's just an ease that I can just tell that I think that transfers over well. And then he fights for every ball he has, and it's just great to see. I just go for more from film, no really statistics I'm gonna say about him, but what I've seen and what he's able to do in film over not just the highlights, but his everyday games is just consistent fight. And I think whoever gets him could get a good steal in the draft.
Yeah, and film is the best way to look at it because if you just purely look at stats, sure that gives you an idea, but that also brings in quarterback play, which that's pretty inconsistent through college. Some are great, some never even have a shot at the NFL. But he's he's huge. He's 6'4", 223, and like you said, he's quicker. He's faster than what his size indicates. So that's pretty exciting right there. And he's just a huge possession receiver, and he just bullies defenders. I mean, I like I like that you have pointed out these great things about him because he definitely is not usually talked about in the top 5 receivers.
Well, I'm definitely going to point out what we talked about earlier is the consistency is if you want to get a guy that's going to get that route running separation and a consistent catch, the check down catches that aren't looked highly upon as exciting but still get the job done. Patriots, for example. Um, but that's still going to get him a lot of stats and catches for how he could be used. And of course, he could be used all over the place, not being having played a consistent um, place in his college career.
Yeah, I mean, he could be somebody like Brandon Marshall, that big body receiver who just, he's a red zone threat and he's used all over the field, you
Yeah.
know. But what would you say would be if you had to point out one weakness in his game?
Weakness, I think, is the yard. From what I saw, if with his big body, obviously he's not going to break as much as some of the shiftier receivers, but a lot of once contact was initiated, he usually went down pretty fast. Even he had a lot of fight going throughout the whole route, but I would have liked to seen uh, more fight and after he was contacted with.
I just had to make you say a weakness because I know how much you love him.
Yeah, if I know who the Patriots have, but if I know they should not draft a wide receiver, but I think he definitely should be a wide receiver. People should check into. Yeah.
That's fair.
hmm You can go.
All right. Well, next I will bring up Denzel Mims, and he's been highly talked about since the combine because he's 6'3", 207, so he's a pretty big receiver, and a lot of what people were knocking on him on was because of his speed. But he ran a 4.38 40-yard dash at the combine, which was really fast for somebody his size, and he had a 6.66 3-cone drill, which was the best out of any receiver there at the combine. So I mean, he's tall, long, fast, quick. He has a lot of potential. I mean, he seems like he did a great job blocking too, but he had 18 drops over the last 2 years. So he has a lot of potential because of he's just a physical specimen. I just don't. I'm kind of on the fence if I want to have him, top 5, top 10, or even farther down.
Yeah,
What are your
I
thoughts on him?
I'd agree. He had a 1,000 yard season last year, 1,000 yard season in 2017. Consistent receptions from 55 to 60 receptions. His average reception length was 15.5 last year, which is pretty crazy. I know Baylor, he was used as a deep ball receiver, so that would explain some of the statistics. He was not someone I had rated as high compared to other people I had, so I didn't watch as much film on him, I can admit. But I know that his knock was the drops as well as more of a raw talent than a finished talent that you could use now in the NFL.
Yeah, but just that those physical traits he has, you just cannot deny how much potential he has if coach can get that out of him. But right now, he doesn't seem like somebody who you can rely on as a starter in year one. But he could definitely develop into a great receiver.
Yeah. All right. My next receiver that I had after Michael Pittman actually was, if I can get to the list I have, uh, it was Brandon Ayuk. He probably comes as another big surprise. Uh, he is more of a, not this wide receiver class doesn't have the biggest bodies in it. Obviously, there's going to be a few 6'4". I believe he's 6'1". Am I right about that, JP?
I saw the draft; they have him listed at 6 foot
6 foot.
at
That's
the
close.
combine. I mean,
Okay. Well, the natural ability, again, going to the ball going into his hands, soft hands. Again, I just see that with all the 50-50 balls that I see on film. He's not the fastest, but I think he offers a great wide receiver to, or even exceptional wide receiver to prospect. Maybe as a Calvin Ridley, not as fast, but more of a contested ball receiver paired with a fast receiver. I think he'd go well with. He never dropped a pass of more than 20 yards last year. I think that's a great statistic that is a little overseen, but I think that shows that in his contested catches, he really fought for the ball, which I did see. Um, he's not huge again in size compared to a T. Higgins, but he's great. I think a lot. This is what I loved is that he just has a natural balance about him as he's running between people and with the ball in his hands. He has that balance that you kind of see. I would even compare to a running back just with the with the not his size, but his more larger frame, having that natural balance with his natural hands. I think it could transfer over well.
Yeah, a lot of what I've seen about Ayuk is just having those natural hands and just playing with high energy. And yeah, I think he could be a good wide receiver too for sure. He's got okay size, okay speed. I think he's a little bit longer than he is like tall
Yeah, his arm
wingspan.
wingspan, yeah, is pretty big.
Yeah, but I can see that's a pretty interesting stat that you just said that he didn't drop any passes from was it 20 yards or further.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting right there. Huh. Well, I'll go ahead and move on to Justin Jefferson, who he's listed at 6'1", 202 with a 4.44 40-yard dash time. And of course, he had Joe Burrow as his quarterback last year, who had a historic year. But it seemed like he was just a reliable, a little bit of a bigger slot receiver. He had good instincts, really, but he needed to improve a little bit as like a route runner. He was kind of in that system, the college systems, sometimes it's not super disciplined with the route running. It seemed like he was just more get open in the slot. But I mean, he has really good ball skills and great instincts. He had 111 catches, led all college players, and he had the second most touchdowns behind his teammate Jamar Chase, actually. But you wonder how much of it is due to Joe Burrow or how much it was to Justin Jefferson. A lot of like with Drew Brees and Michael Thomas, because Michael Thomas is one of the most efficient receivers in the NFL. And it's like, is that due to Michael Thomas's ability or is it Drew Brees?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think um, that he had an outstanding statistical season last year, and I don't remember from seeing if he had any competing wide receiver that he was going with on the outside. I could be wrong,
He played
but
primarily in the slot.
yeah, primarily in the slot. Uh, I was saying on the outside for another like wide receiver that he could have been competing with touches for, but still
Jamar
haven't.
Chase.
Who?
Jamar Chase, he had the most touchdowns.
Oh, that you mentioned that. Okay, well then, yeah, then I was wrong. Um, but I think for a slot guy as being more, we haven't really mentioned many slot guys yet. He has the raw potential. I didn't have him that high with the people that um I was gonna list for my. He wasn't in my top. He was in my top 8, but I think he has raw talent. And you can't teach that.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it last year he did not do very well on the outside. It seems like he would strictly have to be transitioning into the slot, which we've seen some big slot guys like
Mhm.
Cooper Kupp and Tyler Boyd, and he could fit into that mold. I think a good landing spot for him would be somebody like the Packers, who could be like a number two to Devontae
Ticket.
Adams, and Devontae Adams could be on the outside.
I like that. Yeah, I think that's a good take on that.
Yeah, but although I know Aaron Rodgers at times with younger receivers, if they run the wrong route or if they drop a pass, he gets really frustrated and puts them in the doghouse. But Jefferson, he had a really high catch rate, so I don't think he'd struggle with that. He has great hands, but it's just the route running that's going to be. And then you can teach that potentially. He could be a developmental slot receiver. I think he definitely has potential.
I think with the natural ability to catch the ball, I think one of the more teachable traits, even for if you won't start the first year, is the route running ability compared if he already has the natural ability to catch the ball.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to next wide receiver. Next one that I have is Laviska Chenault. I know there's a lot of fans of him out there for his beastly physical body and his yard after the catch play. Um, I saw a lot of in the film. They really emphasized with that for him that he would get a lot of quick, short throws to the outside. and allow him just to take off. And I mean, that's just using your using your wide receiver to the best of his abilities, and he did that really well. He, I've heard a lot of takes on him being built like a running back that has better hands. This is where the soft hands may have come with a concern for me, but I think it was good enough, especially with how he would be used as a weapon for him to excel on the next level. He could like he could put a new what am I trying to say? A new image of what a wide receiver could look like kind of what Lamar Jackson did. He could be just a more physical wide receiver, as how Lamar Jackson was a physical QB. Um, the quarterback play also plays in with him as a downside for him. Didn't have the most consistent quarterback, so that also could have pertained to his natural catchability that I was looking at. But I think he could be a great weapon, great yards after the catch. Um, and I have him as a wide receiver too, with a lot of raw upside.
Yeah, it was. I remember earlier in the whole draft process that he was ranked inside the top 5 almost everywhere, like 4th a lot of places. But since the draft, it just seems like his stock has been
The
dropping. And
combine?
what was that?
You mean since the combine?
Yes, I keep saying draft. But yeah, he failed to kind of build on a strong, have a stronger season than what he had on 2018. But yeah, I think a lot of that, of course, was due to the quarterback play. And he also has durability is a concern. He had surgeries on the labrum and his toe before the 2019 season. But obviously, like I said earlier in the draft process, before the combine, he was listed really high, ranked really high. And he has a lot of potential, really. And he could fall in the draft quite a bit.
Yeah, I think he's the most raw physical talent there is in the draft. I think with what you could pull from him for what he could be, I think he's a little bit more of a development past the yards after carry, um, yards after reception statistic. Um, with how much the Seattle wide receiver fell last year, um, with he was a bigger, he's taller than LaVisca Chenault. You know,
Metcalf?
yeah, Metcalf, how much he fell just because he was a raw aspect talent, but clearly he could show out with the more finesse route running and what he was taught. I think LaVisca Chenault could do just that as Metcalf did.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, he's 6 foot 227, so you're right. He is built kind of like a running back. He's pretty thick, which I mean that could also always help in the
Yeah.
open field for the yards after the reception.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. Did you have any other ones listed after that?
Well, next I want to talk about Jalen Rager,
All
and
right.
he seemed to be moving up people's draft boards recently. But he's listed at 5'11", 206 pounds, and he had a 4.47 40-yard dash time. He he seems like a great athlete, and like kind of like we said with Chenault, actually, he seems fairly raw, but he's great with the ball in his hands. He's just really good with the yards after the catch. He's explosive and versatile, but he just needs to work on like press coverage, kind of like I said with Henry Ruggs, and his route running could improve too. But I like him a lot as a prospect, though.
Yeah, I think again he's another raw talent that could easily develop into a great sophomore season once he's on a team. I think that he creates a good um, physical gifts that he has. I had a knock on him with that, of course, natural soft hands I'm looking for. But I think there's potential in even in that. He just seems more of a raw aspect, more raw talent to me. I had him listed though, still as a number 8 in my rankings, and I think he just needs a little bit of teaching, and he could go a good way.
Agreed.
Yeah. And now moving on to the next person, my number 7 was T. Higgins, who is the big body wide receiver that everyone's talking about. Um, he has amazing contested catch ability, very large size for um, how much he weighs. He doesn't weigh that much. but he's great after the catch, insane with breaking the tackles for his size. I heard that a lot of scouts were impressed that with his size, he was able to break as much as he did for being 6'4", compared to a running back that could break tackles for smaller size, and how most wide receivers who break tackles are a smaller size. He isn't that great at route separation, but I think he makes up for that in his size, his big size, of course. But when he does get open, he's going to generate a lot of upside. There's not really any consistent downsides with him. He just didn't have as much outstanding talent as the people who get him.
Yeah, like you said, he's 6'4", so he's really big, but he uses his frame really well. And he does have soft hands, and he's got great ball instincts when the ball is in the air. With those 50-50 balls, of course, he's got that size, and he could just be a great red zone threat. But he ran like a fairly limited route tree. Like you said, his route running isn't the best. But I think in the NFL, at least in his rookie year, he'll be used in the red zone a lot.
Yeah, I think he could definitely excel at that. All right, and then my next wide receiver that I had, unless you had any more, was going to be a late round flyer. But did you have any more?
Nope.
All right, so one thing I wanted to do was really dig into a wide receiver that wasn't listed in any of the top 10, top 15, and that is Antonio Gandy-Golden from Liberty University. He's another big-bodied wide receiver, 6'4", 220 pounds. Had 3,000-yard seasons. That could mean a lot or not mean much depending on the school that he was at. Um, he went to the Senior Bowl. I've heard from people analyzing him and scouts is he struggled slightly, but that's to be the case. But a lot of them felt better that he after they saw him going against top 12 talent. Um, I hope that he goes to a team that doesn't judge him on the school that he goes to. I think that's a knock that I've also heard as well is that you want to see a lot of these wide receivers that are able to get into big schools. You're just gonna think of them more highly because the schools drafted them.
Face
But
better competition too.
yeah, and but I think he has amazing raw talent, natural ability, and could really, with his statistics being compared to any other, even more outstanding than some of the other wide receivers, of course, with again in the top 12. He could be a good late round player.
Yeah, and if it were another draft class, he might even be higher because this whole class has tons of upside. He's been regarded as one of the best wide receiver classes in years.
Hmm.
But yeah, he's got lots of upside. He's got that huge frame, small school, so he could still develop a little more with the better competition.
Yeah, I think he could. He definitely needs to develop just to see how he will do against the more top tier cornerback, safety talent, but linebackers. But he definitely could be teachable, and he had the natural ability with his hands that I saw.
Agreed. All right. Well,
Yeah.
we can move on to the running backs.
All right.
And first, I'm going to talk about Jonathan Taylor. And he is listed at 5', 226, and he ran a 4.39 40 time. So he is very fast for his size. And he had so much production in college. I mean, but the thing is, he had 926 total carries, which that worries me. I think he's
I
probably
knew
the
you were
best.
saying, yeah,
Yeah, I think he's probably the best natural runner in this class. But he had 18 fumbles, which is a concern, and he didn't catch lots of passes. But the durability concerns me a little bit with how many carries he had. But I still think that you said it before that Jordan Howard is kind of a good comp for him. You told me, and I mean I agree with that because Jordan Howard, he was a great runner his first couple of seasons too, and he wasn't used a lot in the passing game. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor, I think at 2,000 yards at least twice, and he almost got it three times. And he's got that size speed combination. He's probably gonna be drafted pretty high, but it does worry me a little bit, especially for fantasy football, that he doesn't catch the ball a lot, which he could develop with that because Melvin Gordon coming out of college wasn't known as a great pass catcher, but he developed that skill set in the NFL.
yeah. And I think you mentioned the 18 fumbles as a worry, but I think that also comes with the amount of sample size he had with the 926 carries. Of course, he's gonna have more fumbles. And I mean that was just in the past season, but still with the sample size, it can lessen that load a little bit. I think, yeah, Justin Howard is a great example that I mentioned before.
Jordan Howard.
I keep saying Justin. Man, I keep calling him that. I might just call him that now on, and you'll know who I'm talking about.
He's Justin now.
He's Justin now. But anyways, yeah, great year. I think that his size and downhill running ability it's going to be great for him. The durability after how much he's already been used in college, you just don't know how long he will last if he's able to keep it up consistently for. I think he could have a great 1, 2, 3 years, but will he be that running back that you would then? This is the big difficulty, but the big thing that's happening is, do you pay a running back? And if he excels, will he be someone you want to pay after all the workload he's already taken?
Yeah, especially if he gets a heavy workload early. But what's positive for him is he has not had the injuries throughout college, so he has the frame, and that's why he's been used that much, I guess. But Christian McCaffrey also had a concern coming out of college because he was used a lot, and there's concerns about his durability. But we've seen now that he's held up very well. So our concerns, he could prove us wrong. Some
Yeah.
guys just seem like they don't get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Christian McCaffrey was another person he was compared to with his durability and how much of a workhorse he was used. And you see, if you have someone, say, even Adrian Peterson got hurt, but he's producing, he's still producing even with his injury.
Yeah,
And
and
I
running
think,
back is just a position that gets hurt so often.
yeah. But
And that's why
anyways,
the touches are scary when they have lots anyways.
mhm.
All right, well, we can move on to the next prospect, which I'm going to bring up J.K. Dobbins.
I was actually gonna bring him up, so that's good.
And he's listed at 5'9", 209 pounds. And at Ohio State, he was just a very tough, reliable, strong runner. From what I've seen, he's got like a chiseled, strong physique.
Hmm.
And he's not quite as big as Jonathan Taylor, but the way he plays and his durability, he seems like he could be getting lots of touches on the ground. And he had he showed that he had pretty good ability in the passing game too. The only knock I really have on Jacob Dobbins is it seems like he does not have a lot of burst necessarily.
Yeah, I think from what I've read that he doesn't have the burst with the initial contact, but a lot of upside for him is that they say he can kick it into a second gear, say after one touch has been made on him. So hopefully that can transfer over. And I think burst comes with also training camp exercises. I think burst can be helped a little bit, but that is definitely a knock that's worried about. But 6.7 yards per carry is a great statistic that even for college it can carry over really well.
Yeah, he's just a tough, rugged runner, and he just seems pretty well rounded as a running back.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll take the next one. Obviously, another high-end tiered running back for this draft would be DeAndre Swift from Georgia. Um, he's listed in the top three in most NFL draft um, prospects.
Yep.
He has great acceleration. Um, he has, I think, great vision that he takes kind of like a Le'Veon Bell, cut here, but he does that with quickness to then find where he needs to go. I've watched more of him because of being a top tier running back, but he wasn't. From what I've seen, what I've read, is that he was overused at Georgia. Um, he had just more limited sample size, but he did the most with what he was given, and I think that goes to excel of what he's able to do.
Yeah, he's got a real pitter patter style to him.
Yeah.
He's very explosive, quick. I mean, there's not very many knocks about him. He's great in the passing game, and his ball security was great too. The thing is though, he wasn't used in that capacity as a workhorse running back, and that's my biggest concern with him. Um, because I don't I kind of tend to believe he lacks like the workhorse ability. I think that he would be really good to go to the Dolphins and be with somebody like Jordan Howard, and DeAndre Swift can, I'd say, get 60% of the snaps, and Jordan Howard could get the others with the tough in the trench runs. Because, like I said, I don't think DeAndre Swift can have 20, 25 carries a game and hold up. But he does have he was not used a lot in college, so that does help that he's got more tread on the tires. But
Yeah.
I don't know if that was because they didn't trust him as a workhorse. Maybe they saw him as being a little soft. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you never know. He could be just he said he was pretty solid at the catching ability. I mean, if he develops that, he could be in a committee backfield, but still be focused. Again, Patriots fan, he could be focused like a James White or a more shifty running back.
I'd say Austin Eckler is kind of where I
Yeah.
might go with that
We're about to see what he does with the workhorse, though.
if he gets it. Yeah, maybe they might get Justin Jackson more. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll move on to the next prospect, and this is a running back that I'm actually a really, really big fan of, and that is Cam Akers. He's listed at 5'10", 217, and he had a 4.47 40-yard dash time. And he's just a very instinctive runner. He's tough with a strong build, great vision, and he avoided 76 tackles last year. So he's really good at breaking tackles. And what was really strange last year is 76% of his yards came after contact last year. He played
That's
behind
crazy.
a horrific offensive line. It was terrible. But he still produced behind a terrible offensive line. And I really like him a lot this year. I think personally, I have him in my top three. There's a little bit of ball security concerns, but a lot of people have been able to fix that through the NFL. And he was capable in the passing game too. He's got a good build to be a workhorse back. He's one of my favorite running backs in this draft class.
Yeah, they mentioned a high thing about him is his blocking ability. That whenever he was used to block for the passing game, that he excelled in that as well.
That's huge
Uh,
for somebody coming out of college too. A lot of them don't have that.
yeah, and for his build though, is 5'10", 217 pounds. I think that helped him in his blocking ability. But I didn't know they had a bad offensive line, so hearing that statistic from you, that's crazy that he had 76% of his yards
Yeah,
he
the first initial contact, it's
after
insane right
contact.
there.
That's crazy. I think that could transfer over really well. And if you're behind a bad offensive line, imagine being drafted to someone who's repairing their offensive line and needing a running back as well.
Yeah, he'd be happy to play behind any offensive line in the NFL. And a lot of what we saw from Cam Akers actually was he did get like a little cute with trying to make yards, but he was what I see out of that is he didn't trust his offensive line and he was making the effort, which I like to see that. And um, Barry Sanders, he has the most carries for negative yards in the NFL. So and nobody talks about him being he's a bad running back because of that, but Cam Akers, that could translate into the NFL. It might have just been because the offensive line, he didn't trust it, and he was trying to do it all himself.
I mean, you mentioned Barry Sanders as well as someone who's behind a bad offensive line and still excelled at what he was able to do. I mean, I think if you could hope for the best of anyone, let's say Cam Akers, you'd want him to be like a Barry Sanders, not worrying about those tackles behind the line as if he excels at the times he goes above it.
Yeah, I can only imagine what Cam Akers would be behind like a great offensive line like the Colts or something.
Yeah, that's true.
All right,
All
well,
right.
I'll go ahead and move on to the next running back. I mentioned Clyde Edwards-Helaire,
Mm-hmm.
and he's small. He's 5'7", 207 pounds, and he had a 4.6 40 time. And he's just very, very quick. He's got great pass catching ability, maybe the best in the entire draft class. And he's just like a small, muscled hamster is what it reminds me of. He's just so small, but he's strong. Reminds me a little bit of Maurice Jones-Drew. He's just
Yeah.
tough for his size, and the players talk very highly about him. Actually, Joe Burrow, he was asked who the best player that he's ever played with, and he said Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And even last year, LSU, they gave the MVP award for last season to Clyde Edwards-Helaire and not Joe Burrow with that historic season, which is crazy to me. But it, there's so much that you have to like about him. But him being 5'7", 207 pounds, it worries me a little bit because it's a small frame. And the other knock I'd have on him is he doesn't have the long speed, but like he makes up for that with his quickness.
Yeah. I think what that could attribute to is you would see maybe in the locker room a great work ethic, and work ethics transfer over well to NFL. I mean, you see those documentaries of these legends who all of it attributes to them nonstop grinding when others wouldn't, and being people that someone would look up to. And if he's already that in college, then that could credit him to what he's able to do with his small size, being able to pound out every inch per inch that he's able to make for not being the most physically gifted person. Um, I'm reading a statistic that he had 36% of his carries going for first down. I think that's pretty crazy for his size as well, that you could do that on an average basis, not knowing it could be because maybe they pass and then ran, but I think that could possibly pertain to when he, again, being able to break tackles once he can uh, get past. If he's able to do that, then he can only excel from there.
And I actually just looked it up, and he's actually the same size as Maurice Jones-Drew, but he doesn't
That's
have quite the long speed as Maurice Jones-Drew. But I, between him and Swift, they're both a little bit smaller.
that was a
And
mistake. Yeah,
I almost said Shift, not
shift.
that. Which is a cool last name, DeAndre Swift.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would like to add the last name,
Yeah,
especially as a running back,
now you're just buttering him up. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But yeah, they're both a little bit smaller. I mean, maybe the one of them will surprise me, but anytime running backs less than 215 pounds, it does concern me a little bit if they'll be able to hold up as a workhorse running back in the NFL. But Clyde Edwards-Helaire and DeAndre Swift, they both looked real tough. So I would hope that at least one of them would at least get the shot at becoming a workhorse, because they're both exciting players.
yeah. I would agree. And I'm going to go to the next running back that I've
Okay.
seen all throughout the drafting picks. He could be 1, he could be 10, he could be 5. You just don't know. But Zach Moss from Utah, um, he's 223 pounds, 5.5 yards per carry in each of the past 3 seasons, which for a consistency, that's great to see. I don't know how great the offensive line was or how bad it was, but that's always good. The one concern that's being knocked on him now is that his injury history and what he's had to recover over the past few seasons. But he's also being compared to Marshawn Lynch, who was a beast that would get injured, but it really wouldn't affect him after a lot of his injuries. So you just don't know.
Yeah, he's just a very powerful. And he's quick. He's a quick runner too. He's patient, and like you said, he has that injury history, and he also kind of lacks the long speed too. But I mean, he just seems like a great running back to have, inside the 5-10 yard line to pound it in short yard situations.
Yeah.
All right, and another running back I want to bring up is
Oh,
were you finished with that?
I was gonna say, do you have anything to say about his injury history specifically that I'm not quite sure about?
Or not exactly.
Yeah.
But I want
Uh,
to talk about AJ Dillon because he just seems like a physical freak. He's 6 foot 247. And he's nearly 250 pounds, and he ran a 4.5 40-yard dash, which for his size is pretty darn impressive. It reminds me a little bit of Derrick Henry. He's just a huge runner, and he carries his weight well. Like I said, he's fast, but
yeah.
he's not a great pass catcher, and his quickness isn't great. But I just want to bring him up because that's quite interesting to see somebody of that size and speed.
I mean, I think a lot can be carved out in the NFL if you're not a three down back. If you have the right system for being a bruiser and one being a pass catcher, that could still work really well. And I think one has excelled for a more consistent basis, except since the past few years, was the Bears when they had Tariq Cohen and Jordan Howard. They always can move the ball well with that 1-2 punch. You just don't know if they're going to use a pass. You know they're going to use the pass catcher, and you know they're going to use a runner when they're in the game, but they still could excel well because they're both great at what they do.
Yeah, and a lot of teams in the NFL now are using running back by committee. So
Mhm.
he definitely would have a spot on an NFL roster in today's NFL, I think,
I mean, that's aggravating from a fantasy standpoint, but
for
you
sure.
if your NFL team has that great 1-2 punch going, you're not going to complain. You know.
Yeah, for sure. All right, and I just wanted to bring up one deep sleeper I had at running back because you had one for receiver, and
Mm-hmm.
that is Javon Leak, and
Jamal.
he's 6 foot 215. And from what I saw, he had just like elite playmaking ability. He had great instincts, and if you see his highlight reel, it's really quite fun. You could look it up. But the thing is he never. I mean, not never. He had double-digit carries only 3 times in his career, and so he is a very small sample size. But I think he has a lot of potential for a late round running back because from what I saw in the NFL, I mean, not in the college field, he did really well with what he had. So
Mm-hmm.
he's an interesting prospect for me as a deep sleeper.
I mean, yeah, being from Maryland, that probably another knock that he gets is his small school that he's from as well. And you just don't know how that can transfer over to top 12 talent, NFL talent. Yeah,
Yeah, agreed. Well, I think that about does it for us here.
I think it does. I hope you all enjoyed our opinions about the top wide receivers and running backs. And if you're interested in what we keep talking about and jambling about, then you should check us out on Twitter and YouTube at FF Fanatics 11. And yeah, have a good day.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Thank you.